Thank you, Peter. I will pick up from where Peter left off. I'm going to be speaking more on the collective dimension, the greater whole that Peter referenced towards the end there. So my name is Aterah Nusrat. I'm the Director for Integrative Medicine and Planetary Health Program at the Osher Center. And I give my thanks to Peter for initiating this programming at the beginning of this year. It's very new, and so it's very exploratory at this point. And I also want to thank the Nova Institute for creating this space. This conference has been absolutely incredible. It's been amazing. So thank you to you for creating, having the vision, and for all the speakers that have gone before. I'm going to build a little bit on some of the points that came out over the conference, which have landed with me, and share a little bit of my own experience. So I have a background in environmental sustainability as a program coordinator and manager both in the UK and the US. I've worked with the Osher Center for Integrative Medicine for about 6 years in different capacities. And I'm primarily going to be speaking to you from my own personal experience as a spiritual practitioner of over 20 plus years at this point. And it was really anchored in spiritual teachings of Eastern Enlightenment, in dual, non-dual teachings, in the context of an international intentional spiritual community. And in that setting, we really explored going from individual practice of meditation to working together in what I would call holons. And I think Jeannie referenced holobites in the previous session. I think this is a derivation of that. Holons are subparts of wholes, which are wholes unto themselves. So it really fits in with the whole ecosystem context that we're looking at here. So I want to thank Susan as well for starting off the conference with the context of an imperative to evolve, because that's very much what I'm interested in terms of the evolution of human consciousness. And this was very much what we were doing, the work we were doing over the span of 20 plus years. And I really appreciated the emphasis that we've been hearing over and over again in this conference, that the root of the planetary crisis is essentially a spiritual crisis. The focus, the prioritizing of relationship has been foremost in so many presentations. The emphasis that we are not separate, we are not fundamentally divided in ourselves, and we are not separate from the natural world, re-emphasizing that in very different ways and through different ways of knowing. And it's clear from everything that people have been sharing that we are looking for a paradigm shift. Everybody is interested in how do we facilitate this great transition. And there are obviously lots of different ways and actors that are participating in this. So my contribution, and I'm sorry I don't have lots of research to present, but it is from a subjective perspective, but I'm hoping that there is research being conducted in various pockets of the world and will continue to be. But what we did together was really alternate between individual practice and holonic practice in groups. And our work was very much influenced by many luminaries, but two that stand out for me were the Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who I believe Thomas Berry was influenced by and who was referenced yesterday, and Indian sage Sri Aurobindo. So I'm just going to read a little bit about them and their backgrounds and their philosophy, which will inform my sharing basically. So Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, he lived from the 1800s to about the 1950s. He was a French Jesuit priest, scientist, paleontologist, theologian, philosopher, and teacher. And he was the author of several influential books. You probably have heard of The Phenomenon of Man. The Phenomenon of Man represents Teilhard's attempt at reconciling his religious faith with his academic interests as a paleontologist. It entails the notion that evolution is becoming an increasingly optional process. He points to the societal problems of isolation and marginalization as huge inhibitors of evolution, especially since evolution requires a unification of consciousness. He states that no evolutionary future awaits anyone except in association with everyone else. Teilhard argued that the human condition necessarily leads to the psychic unity of humankind, though he stressed that this unity can only be voluntary. Teilhard also states that the evolution is an ascent toward consciousness, with a continuous upsurge toward the omega point, which for all intents and purposes is God. So I remember that Nadine actually mentioned something similar to this yesterday in terms of emergence, and that the earth doesn't need saving, it needs our conscious cooperation. So that stood out to me and made me connect with this quote. And then Sri Aurobindo. So Sri Aurobindo, he also lived around the same time from the 1800s to the 1950s. He was an Indian philosopher, yogi, poet, and political activist. Later in life, he became a spiritual reformer, and he introduced his visions of human progress and spiritual evolution. So Aurobindo argued that the world can evolve and become a new world with new species. He argued that the end goal of spiritual practice could not merely be a liberation from the world into samadhi, but would also be the descent of the divine into the world in order to transform it into a divine existence. At the center of Aurobindo's metaphysical system is the supermind, an intermediary power between the unmanifested Brahman and the manifested world. Aurobindo claims that the supermind is not completely alien to us and can be realized within ourselves, as it is always present as a potential within us. So both of these great luminaries came from very different cultural contexts, but they're pointing to the same direction of the evolution of human consciousness. And again, this is the kind of work that we were endeavoring to pursue, we were endeavoring to actualize in whatever way we could in our spiritual community. We worked together in discussion groups where we were trying to facilitate emergence. And to simplify that, and just in the essence of time, I feel as though what we experienced in the pinnacle of our community was this accessing of a higher state of intelligence, of collective shared consciousness. There's a certain sensitivity and compassion that emerges at this level. And it is a state experience that we can tap into as a collective. But to do that, you have to, in some way, get out of the way. We can't have our own self-concern present. We can't be preoccupied with our own stories, our histories, our ideas, our philosophies. We have to allow ourselves to be empty, to allow this space to be free between us so that this emergence can happen. And I feel as though what we were doing exemplified some of what Sri Aurobindo and Pierre Teilhard de Chardin were pointing to. So in my own way, I'm continuing this work in different online forums. And I'm hoping that there may be space in the Constellation project that's been spoken about to explore this further with people if they're interested. And I personally feel as though there is room and a need for this kind of exploration as part of the suite of approaches that we are taking to address our planetary crises. It comes from a place of not reacting to from a place of fear, but of acknowledging the wholeness that's already within us, and that there's a greater whole that we can actually aspire to collectively. And I think the power of the collective is really what's needed here. We're not working in isolation, and the potential for what can emerge, the kind of solutions, the perspectives that we could bring to our shared crises, I think could be sourced from this potential. So that's my contribution. I hope that's helpful, and look forward to speaking with you more about it. Thank you.